like every one of you to take 2 or 3 minutes and give me what you think are the most important things that everyone who is attending today should take away from this webinar as things to act on or to really start thinking about going forward. And Rebecca Rakowski, we're going to start with you.
I think the takeaways for me from today would be you have to look at cyber like it's a team sport, and I think every one of the presenters touched on this in one way, shape, or form. This isn't just an IT issue and therefore IT solution. You have to get the C-suite involved, IT, legal, HR, and all of your employees, because really you are only as strong as your weakest link in those chains. So it's really important that you look at it as a team sport now. The next thing I would say is to stop looking at regulation as though it's a bad thing. It's not a 4-letter word. You can turn it into a real opportunity. And I would suggest that for those companies that are in regulated areas, they definitely do that. But even companies that are not in regulated industries, taking an aggressive approach to their cybersecurity is going to serve them in good stead, whether regulation touches them or not. And again, they can use that as a marketing and as a differentiator in their marketplace. The next thing I would say is don't forget to check and follow up. Cybersecurity is obviously not a one and done scenario. I don't write my breach response and put it away and let it collect dust. It's a constantly, cybersecurity is organic, it is evolving, it's a living, breathing thing. Things are changing so rapidly on the other side and so rapidly from a technological perspective that you really need to be staying on top of it. And because I'm a lawyer, I'm going to end with, don't forget the legal. We often get left out of the cybersecurity, sometimes because we're not as tech savvy, but a law firm and lawyers can add a really important piece to this puzzle. A lot of times we find things buried in contracts that companies didn't even know they were exposed to from a cyber perspective because, somebody didn't know to look for it. So don't forget that lawyers have a real part to play here, and not just in the courtroom. Too often they think we're all just ready to go and object to things in a courtroom, but really we like to be our clients' problem solvers too, and working with all of the the C-suite, the IT, everyone I talked about before. We really think that it's an important piece to the puzzle.
Alejandro Mejares, your turn.
Thank you, David. So a few takeaways from this presentation today, from my presentation today. So from what we're getting from the regulators out there, make sure that you're assessing risk often and accurate, or as accurate as you can. We've seen that a lot of regulators the conversation are driven 90% around risk. What are they doing? Are you doing your CAT? Are you doing your GLBA risk assessment? What are you doing with the control? How are you reporting that? What are you mitigating control, etc.? So risk. Cyber risk, especially. Use whatever tool framework you want, but it has to be done often and accurate. And when I say accurate, you need to calculate your inherent risk based on your impact and likelihood. Get your control, make sure that you incorporate into your risk assessment the effectiveness of your control, and then come up with your residual risk and act upon your very high, moderate residual risk. Then after you get that, the way that you report, make sure that you get numbers, lots of numbers. At the end, the board is formed by bankers, and bankers like numbers, so give them numbers. We're up and down in our vulnerabilities. Our clicking rate is 9%, and when you compare that with the benchmark, we are good. We need to improve. Compare between quarters, between months, between years. So use a lot of numbers, and you will get the proper feedback that you want.
Jorge Santiago.
Yes. I will say banking and financial services has been an industry that has been traditionally slow to change, but there are things happening in the market that will accelerate the rate at which these institutions will need to adapt and change, and with that change will come a drastic change in the risk and the regulatory landscape as well. Financial institutions are going to have to shift their focus from the short term and being reactive to being more strategic around all these disruptors that are going to be happening. It's going to be a journey rather than a destination. And cash will continue to disappear. Customers will look more and more for customized services. Bank branches as we know them will probably become a thing of the past. And non-traditional payment methods like Venmo can actually wipe out smaller players in the banking industry. The bigger players will probably focus their resources into building platforms that they can lease to provide services for smaller players and radically transform their business models. And then only the more adaptive and innovative small players will continue to exist in this new banking world. And as such, I mean, again, the cybersecurity implications of this are just going to be staggering. We just need to be flexible as change continues to be the new norm. Thank you.
And the last word goes to you, Alex Hernandez.
Thank you, sir. And, as bankers, we certainly understand a lot about safety and soundness. My parting words are, think of this from a perspective of cyber safety and soundness. We need appropriate systems in place and processes and controls, but we need to watch those. We need to verify those. We need to test those. We need to test how our internal individuals follow those processes, those controls. Measure that, monitor that. If we can't watch everything that needs to be watched based on our levels of risk internally, let's go find co-managed partners that we're not turning the keys over to somebody else, but we're not necessarily trying to rely on internal resources that are already stretched very, very far. So on that cybersecurity, cyber compliance side of it, once again, think of it from a cyber safety and soundness perspective, and keep your house in order while you're doing that. Thank you very much, David.